But when we think about culture, and I think Toyota is like this, just like maybe your company is as well. It's kind of like this idea that, the bird talking to the fish. And you may have seen this kind of thing before where the bird says to the fish, "What's it like living in water?" And what do you think the fish says? "What's water?" Every day we're swimming in it, and it's really difficult to kind of know what it is if it's there. That's the same with culture. Toyota had the same experience in trying to figure out just what it is that their culture was and how they transmit that out to the people internally and eventually externally. So it's also been said that fish discover water last. That's a good lesson for us to think about when we're trying to observe our own processes at work, trying to understand just who we are and what we do, what drives our behavior. Because this culture is something that will drive us, all the behaviors and structures that we put in place. So what most organizations do is they look at the practices of lean, the things it's easy to see. They look at the tools, they look at the techniques, they look at some of the things like 5S, they look at some of the things like Kanban, those tools and techniques that everybody uses, the standardized work, and then they go and they copy it. And sometimes you get a little benefit, but the sustainability is not there because people rarely look a little deeper to understand how all those things happen. All they want is the result. But if you look a little deeper, you see it's built upon these principles, this long-term philosophy, the people, the process, the purpose. And in our case, we called that the way. Now, we were still digging and trying to understand that root system, but it was at least a nice attempt. And it's been going on ever since the late 1980s in North America, all the way till now, continually evolving to what that would be. Now, when you think about then what Toyota was trying to do was trying to codify a culture. And there's lots of ways to define culture, I think. I like this one, which basically says, that we share our values and our norms and our expectations. And basically it says, this is how you're expected to behave when you work here. And we all share that. And the structures of the Toyota production system with the pillars give us great ideas about how we should function every day. But then in the long term, to maintain that, we want to have what we call this Toyota way. It outlines the values, norms, and expectations of the global Toyota community. So this is kind of my interpretation or the Honsha interpretation of what that way might look like the lean way in a sense. So we have two fundamental principles that we want to get to. You can have more values in your organization, but two core ones are continuous improvement and respect. And respect can be respect for people, respect for environment. It has a broad meaning. But those are the two foundational things we want to get to. Now, in the middle of that are these personal attributes of courage, humility, and Kaizen. And the concept is the more we can balance our courage and humility, the more able we are to truly, deeply Kaizen. And I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean by that idea of Kaizen with this. But Kaizen with just courage or with just humility is less effective. And in the long term, not effective. But if we balance those two things out, then we have something. So one way, again, many ways to define courage, one way to define it is that we form a long-term vision meeting challenges with courage and creativity to realize our goals. Now, think about this. Why would we say that creating a vision is courageous? Think about that. Think about when you've seen someone in your organization put out a long-term vision. Maybe not you. You all look like nice people. Maybe it's your cynical neighbor that you work with or something. And I've heard a lot of people say, we'll never be able to do that. That's so crazy. What is this person thinking? And they start to poke holes in that vision. So we say it's courageous because we do it anyway. We create the vision, we put it out there, and then we work to realize that vision. So One representation of that we have in a lot of lean organizations is this idea of Hoshin Kanri, which gives us a chance to set a vision, but also then a mechanism to kind of break that down. So I call it kind of translating from one language to another. So the vision may be written in this language we don't quite understand. And as you go through the layers of the organization, we have to translate, in a sense, maybe from French to Spanish, from Spanish to English. And then it goes back and forth in this kind of catch-ball idea of making sure we've translated each of those layers in a way that the next layer of the organization understands what they need to do. So if I have a EBITDA goal at the top level, I don't go to the front lines and say, hey, we need to increase EBITDA by 5%, and I know you guys can do it. I mean, I want to empower you to do that. So, hey, meet me here at December 31st. Let me know how you did. See ya. I'm empowering you, right? It doesn't mean anything. So we have to translate it. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of perseverance to hang in there and translate those things down to the teams and the individuals so we know what to do. And that in Toyota is where we actually then develop people in the organization. That's that respect for people. That's where we build problem-solving capability by creating those gaps all the way through. It's a very courageous thing. So this is the same thing that happens in our organizations. A lot of times we have people we bring into our family, into our organization, and immediately we start to poke holes in the potential vision we might have for them. And sometimes it's our peers that say, oh, how do you see potential in that person? I mean, look what they do every day. They cry, they poop, they pee, they're disrespectful. But then if you're the same kind of thinking way, you say, their potential is there. My job is to bring that out. So that vision of the grand Hoshin is one thing, but the vision of the people and the individual is part of what we can do every day. So we would say that if we're not developing individuals in the team using that courage, we can never really truly be a lean organization. So the second part of this idea is humility. So we balance our courage with our humility. And one way to define humility is that we go to the source. You may have heard that in lean before. Without assumptions, to find facts, to make correct decisions, to build consensus, and quickly achieve our goals. Now, not even that sentence is quick. So you got to be wondering, what's quick about that? Well, the idea being, if we don't go and see without assumptions, to find facts, to make correct decisions, we will go and do that again and again and again. So we rarely have time to, always have time to do it over. So this says, be humble. Taichi Ono, one of the fathers of the Toyota production system, says, observe the work without preconception and with a blank mind. Now, no jokes about your coworkers and their blank minds, but the idea is that when we observe, we don't bring our preconceptions, which in this case, a preconception is a solution. Don't bring that. Best you can, push it to the side and just observe. Then, once you get to this point of occurrence, you can ask, why? Now, the last part of that circle there is this idea of Kaizen, and we've all heard this. And you may be wondering, well, why do you have continuous improvement and Kaizen on the same one? Aren't those the same thing? Well, there's a little bit of twist to that. And I'll explain that to you in just a second. But the definition of how we would define Kaizen would be, we improve our business operations continuously. A lot of times we stop with that. But the rest of it is always driving for innovation and evolution. One criticism I've heard of kind of the Kaizen mindset that people have sometimes is that, well, you're probably just thinking really small then. But we see it a little differently. We would see it as this Kaizen culture being an incubator of innovation because it helps people get used to and understand change. So if I can incrementally change every day, when big changes come, I've built up the capability and the capacity to handle bigger changes. But if you just spring a big change on me all at once, it's almost impossible. So this idea of the Kaizen culture helps us to become better every day and get used to this culture of change and improvement. Most organizations wait for like the 10x Kaizen. But in order to build to 10x, sometimes it's best to start with the 1x, as this case is. So this was part of a big campaign to do that. So this idea then of Kaizen, there's a little different way to see it as well. So the first kind of lazy translation we do of Kaizen is continuous improvement. People like that. You know, it's easy to market, continuous improvement. It's even easier to market the next kind of level of translation. It's Kai and Zen. It's change for good. Marketing department can do wonders with that one, right? But if you kind of look at the symbols, and there's a few different ways to kind of look at this pictorial language, this kanji, and kind of see what the symbols mean and people, but some of the interpretations are, this top figure is actually a person, believe it or not, kind of hitting themselves. It sounds weird, I know, but it's just a symbol, right? The bottom symbol is like a table or an altar, and it has like a sheep on top. And so it goes back to ancient times of either sacrificing to feed or sacrificing for the gods or something like that. We lay it on the table. So it's a kind of a sacrifice or a feeding kind of symbol. So one way to look at Kaizen, and this is not good for the marketing department, is that it can be a personal, painful sacrifice. Because when we change something, we give up the way it used to be done. And if we are very deeply entrenched in the way it used to be done, it's like losing a part of us sometimes. So those two elements, the continuous improvement and respect, are what we're shooting for. And respect looks a lot of different ways. And one of the ways one of the things we focus on with respect is creating this idea of mutual trust, and also the teamwork aspect that comes with that, so we can work well together. So none of it works. The lean system doesn't work without that work built on this mutual trust and respect. And you've probably seen the idea before that if we're building this partnership with our employees, that the organization can provide that kind of stability. The employees then, if they're trained well and they're in the right culture, they can improve the processes, which makes the company better able to serve and be stable and contribute to society. So then it goes back into the organization being more stable. It can continue the cycle. This is underpinnings of what the lean system is. The underpinning of all this idea of respect goes to what Eiji Toyota said many years ago. He said that a person's life is an accumulation of time, and just 1 hour is important. He said employees or team members provide their precious hours of life to the company. So we have to use it effectively, otherwise we are wasting their life. And when you boil it down, that's kind of the essence of the Toyota way, of the lean culture. We all should work together diligently to put together a system and processes that people can be successful in, so that we're not wasting their effort, but they're contributing to the greater good of the organization that supports many, many families in our community.